Hi, my name is Axie O. I'm a Korean American young adult author, and my latest novel is called The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. It's a YA reimagining of a Korean folktale about a brave girl who dives into the sea in order to save her people.
Korean American Axie O is the author of books such as Rebel Soul and XOXO, novels that garnered much praise from the young adult reader community and K-pop lovers alike. She is now about to release an enthralling novel filled with intrigue, self-sacrifice, and loyalty. Hi, I'm Gemma and welcome to the Red Carpet. I'm delighted to be talking with Axie about her latest book, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. Hi Axie, thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk to you.
Your latest book is a Korean mythology retelling, and I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with the story once it comes out. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, so my novel, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, is a YA reimagining of the tale of Shincheong, which is like an old pansori, like Korean folktale that they used to be like an oral story. And it was one of the stories that um, I grew up listening to from my parents, but also like I had a picture book of that story. So when I was like, okay, I want to write a retelling, I was like, I want to rewrite a telling from my own culture, Korean culture, and I knew the story really well, but I wanted to make my own twist on it. So The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea.
Your first book was a sci-fi dystopian story, your second a K-pop romance, and now Girl is a fantasy retelling of a historical Korean folktale. You dabble in a lot of different genres. Do you have a favorite or are you just exploring?
Wow, that's a hard question. I think my favorite genre to read growing up was fantasy. So I'm actually on my fourth book. I'm going to the genre that's most beloved to me. But I love all the genres. That's why I write in all these different genres because I'm a huge reader. I read a ton in all the different genres. So I read sci-fi, contemporary, fantasy. So it's actually pretty natural for me to write in all those different genres, as opposed to like I don't read thrillers. So it would be actually out of the realm of possibility for me to write a thriller because I just don't read them. But I love to watch them. But I think I just have so many interests, so it's not unnatural for me to write in all these different genres.
Your main characters have all been Korean. What is your interest in the young adult genre centralizing around the Korean culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because my first book I ever wrote, the main character was not Korean. And that was because I didn't know that, you could have Korean characters be main characters. Like, I really didn't know growing up because that just wasn't the sort of landscape I was reading. Like, I grew up reading a lot of Gail Carson Levine, that's like Ella Enchanted. I read a lot of Philip Pullman, who wrote historic materials, but not a lot of Asian authors because there just wasn't a lot. So actually wasn't until the We Need Diverse Books movement when I realized I could write about my own culture. I could write about Korean people and it wouldn't be considered niche or it wouldn't be considered something that people wouldn't be interested in. And then so like I was like, I'm gonna embrace this. This is awesome. So my first book, Rebel Soul, is a sci-fi dystopia set in Korea. The protagonist is Korean, and then my contemporary is a Korean American character. And I feel so liberated, so free to express my pride in being Korean American, all these different facets of being Korean, which I didn't think I could do when I was growing up. And so this sort of landscape we're in right now for publishing is so great because you can see all these marginalized, all these people of color writing from their own cultures and backgrounds.
Your main character, Mina, opens the book with a self-sacrifice. How did you incorporate feminism into a folktale?
In a retelling, you always kind of want to keep those original folktale elements. So in the original folktale, Shim Chung is sacrificed into the sea for like 300 bags of rice because to take care of her father. Like there's like a deal that's like if she sacrifices herself, the community will give her father 300 bags of rice. So like there's this element in the original folktale that I had to keep in the book, and I was really tiptoeing around that because I know that sacrifice a girl sacrificing herself isn't necessarily feminism, right? And I was like, how do I twist this story so that it empowers the women, the girls in the story? How does it make it so it's not about like doing it for because they, for any sort of like misogynistic or any kind of patriarchy. It's because it's this feeling of taking control of their own life. Like they are making this choice. They want to save their people. I give every single. So the premise of the book is that every year a girl is sacrificed. So I made it so that I tried to put different girls in the book where you could see their motivations are not the same. They all have different motivations. And I wanted it to be something where it was a choice by every girl they make and that there's complexity to it. It's not surface level. I think some of the folktales, you think it's pretty, some people might have like a surface level interpretation. But I was like, no, it's deeper than that. Oh, pun intended. It's deeper than that. And so I definitely was thinking all those elements. I definitely wanted my main character too to misinterpret some things. Like I wanted her to sort of misinterpret Shimchung in the beginning. So my main character is not Shimchung. The folktale is based off my main character is the original character, but Shimchung is a side character in the book. And so I wanted my main character to even misinterpret Shimchung's choices sometimes, and then later learn to understand why she makes these choices and to respect her and to see that not everything is just one way. There's no one way to be a feminist. You don't have to be like wield a knife to be a feminist, but just believing in yourself as a woman, that's feminism, that kind of stuff.
Mina's village is plagued by storms leading up to the yearly sacrifices of girls. Was this a commentary on our own world, such as the patriarchy and climate change?
I mean, it's interesting because when I write my books, I'm not really thinking like the modern world in that way. I am thinking that I'm writing in the way where it's a reader now might read like the original folktale and see elements of like ableism, because in the original folktale the reason she throws herself into the sea is to cure her father of blindness, right? And I actually took that entirely out of my book because I don't think blindness needs to be cured, right? So there are things like that where I knew that we're reading in a modern context. I knew the audience are people, young people in the year 2022 and beyond. And so I wanted to give them, themes that they could relate to, they could feel seen, they could feel safe in the world. I did have some queer characters. I just wanted to feel very safe. So I did think of that way in those ways. But things like climate change, I think it's more like, I'm a big Miyazaki fan. And how Miyazaki, that's one of his huge things. Environmentalism is a huge theme in his book. So I think that kind of just became a theme in my book because it is very inspired by that sort of love of nature, taking care of nature. It's like a symbiosis. It's not like humans, humans are at the top of the pole. It's like they are, equal with nature in a way. So I do think those sort of themes I put in because of my influences, as opposed to being like, I'm going to write about environmentalism.
Let's talk about your writing process. What was your favorite or most exciting scene to write or that you looked forward to?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's such a hard question because I love all my scenes. Actually, the way I write is I'll sometimes write really exciting scenes first. Like not like the full scene. I'll just like write like kind of like little draft. Like I actually wrote the ending first of this whole book. It changed through drafting and revising, but the ending was actually something I wrote first. And there's a scene at the end that I really, really love. No spoilers. I guess something that won't be a spoiler is from the first chapter, which is online. So it's like part of the preview. If you wanted to preview the book, you could read the first chapter online. But in the first chapter, there's a scene where Mina makes the decision to take Shimchung's place. This is in the synopsis, not a spoiler. Mina makes a decision to take Shimchung's place to be the sea god's bride. And I really loved writing that scene, that chapter. it was the first chapter. Like besides the ending, it was like the first like full chapter I wrote, and it actually didn't change that much from the original chapter that I wrote. That first chapter when Mina makes that decision and she jumps into the sea. It's like very dramatic.
As this book is a fantasy, how did you do the world building and create the magic system?
Yeah, I think it was done in layers. So the first one was kind of just I just wrote the book. It was like a lot of the world building was just aesthetic. I was like, oh, cool, there's going to be beautiful lanterns. It's a river city, so it's beautiful rivers and dark forests and beautiful palaces. So I was just kind of like thinking like, imagery and aesthetic. And then after that is when I started doing the world building, where I was like, okay, well, what's the political landscape of this world? So I actually have houses in the world where they're capital H houses, where it's like one house is dedicated to protecting the sea god, where my other protagonist is from that house. And then there's another house that protects the spirits of the realm that like kind of like, takes care of their needs in the realm. And then another house that is protects like scholars, and another one that protects military people. Anyway, so the point is that I knew that there would be different. I like added that in. That wasn't even in the first draft. That was like a second draft thing, because I needed more like world building in the book. And then world building usually stems from what I need for the plot. So it's usually plot first. I mean, characters first, then plot, and then like trying to figure out what is necessary for the world that I need to happen. Because I couldn't just go I couldn't go on too many tangents because then like the actual core of the thread that you follow would be, all tangled. So it's kind of I took a bunch of different revisions to get the necessary world building elements into the book.
Your book is highly immersive. You mentioned that you're a fan of Miyazaki, and the book is actually really reminiscent of Studio Ghibli. What other influences did you take from this?
Yeah, so definitely Studio Ghibli was the biggest. Definitely Korean dramas, like saguks, like those sort of like where they're wearing the beautiful hanbok and they have the beautiful palaces. Definitely influenced by those. Actually, the entire soundtrack for this book is like OSTs from K dramas, like those really like epic scores. Like when I was writing the book, that's what I listened to. And actually, but probably the biggest influence actually was reading. Growing up reading all those fairy tales I love to read. I like Ella Enchanted, I mentioned earlier. Juliet Marillier is a very famous author, a New Zealand author. She actually blurbed the book, so her blurb is on the book. So she said nice things about my book, and it's here. Things like that. Like I grew up reading these wonderful retellings of stories, that make the Western stories, and then so it's been great to write my Eastern story for a Western or for a global audience.
Let's discuss Mythology and Fate a little bit. You mentioned the Red String of Fate, creating your own fate. Were there other recognizable themes?
Yeah. So the Red String of Fate that was also like a thing that like just came. I didn't even that wasn't part of the idea. Like I was writing a book and I was like, she wakes up in the city. It was covered in fog, and I was like, how is she going to find anything? And that's where I was like, oh, maybe there's a red string of fate that will tie her to somewhere like it, she wakes up with the red string of fate and she follows it. So where does it lead kind of thing? And in the mythology of the red string of fate is that it ties you to your soulmate, which she knows when she wakes up and she has the string of fate. So it definitely, those sort of things just pop up. Like it wasn't even planned, which is kind of cool. And I like, there are elements of ancestral rights is a thing I bring up in the book. There are imugi, which are actually I think very specifically Korean. Like Red String of Fate is East Asian. I think you can find that everywhere in all the different cultures. But imugi I think are specifically Korean mythological creatures, and they're proto dragons. So they're dragons that they're actually snakes that want to be dragons, and they're usually seen as villainous, like evil. And then the idea is that if they live for 1,000 years, they can become a dragon, or if they fight 1,000 battles, they can become a dragon. So there's like that's like the mythos behind them. So I put them in kind of well, I needed like a villainous, scary force. And there's a fun character who in the book who is an Imugi. And so yeah, those were things. Theme wise, I think family is the biggest theme in the book. I dedicated the book to my mother because she is the one who's always believed in me, as I say in the dedication, but she is my biggest support system. And so family was really important with me. And I'm very close to both my grandmothers. So Mina, the main character, she's like a huge, she does everything thinking of what her grandparents taught her, grandmother and her grandfather taught her. And then the whole reason she sacrificed herself was because she loves her brother, her older brother, and she didn't want him to be hurt. And that was also something that was really important to me because my older brother, he actually passed away when I was younger. When I was 13, he was 16, he passed away from cancer. And so that was actually really important to me. Actually, it was brought up that I could change the brother to a friend, to a female friend, so that it wouldn't be like sacrificing yourself for a man. And I was like, well, the reason I wrote it in the beginning was because I wanted to channel that inner emotion for me personally as a writer. So I was like, it has to stay a brother. And then all the team was like, all right, you're good. It's fine. We don't have to change anything. So like, I think family was really, really important to me. And that is very present in the book.
The biggest takeaway for me as well was the family theme. I thought it was so moving when we get to all the spoiler portion of the book. But thank you for divulging all of that information to us. For all of the mythology and the traditions that you pulled into the book, did you take any author liberties?
Oh my gosh, so many. So many. I'm definitely in the camp that believes that just like, those white authors who dabble in retellings and totally change them, I can change it. Just because it's a Korean folktale doesn't mean I can't like take liberties, change things up. It's a fantasy. It's a lot of it's entirely made up. And so it's actually funny sometimes when I get reviews where it's like, I learned this, that. And I'm like, okay, this was true, but this I made up. So it's like, it's just fun. But yeah, I definitely took a lot of liberties. For example, the biggest one, Shim Chung is not the main character of my book. I have an original character named Mina, and she's the main character. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to, first of all, I didn't want to stick too much to the original folktale because it's only like, I think if you write it all out, it's like only like a page and a half. So there's only so much content you can have. That. And also I wanted to just create a whole new story. And I thought it would be fun for people who also knew the original folktale to see those characters as like fun side characters. And actually Nina in the story tells the tale of Shim Chung because she tells stories in the story. So there's stories within the story. And then the stories that are within the story are real folk tales. And even those I took liberties with. Like I said earlier, I changed the Shim Chung, the ending of the original tale of Shim Chung, because the father, he doesn't like, he doesn't get his blindness cured. He is just perfect as he is. And then I also changed the other two folk tales a little bit, just so they fit the story more. But the essence of the folk tale, at least in my interpretation, is the same. So I definitely took liberties.
Can you tease the audience with something from the book?
Yes, I will read the first sentence. It's the myths of my people say only a true bride of the sea god can bring an end to his insatiable wrath.
Sorry, I just like lost my train of thought because I was like, that was such a good line.
Yes. First line.
Right. What an amazing first line. I know you're a K-pop fan. Hit me with some suggestions.
Well, my favorite artist of all time is IU. I love her. I wrote the book actually entirely to Palette. And also I love Taeyeon from Sonishide, the artist. I love her as a solo artist. it was Palette and Voice, Taeyeon's Voice were like huge inspirations for me. And then I'm a huge NCT fan. I love NCT. They're my current obsession. I saw them in concert. Obviously, I love BTS. I love Blackpink, all those superstars. Yeah, but my all-time and G Dragon. I think IU and G Dragon are my two top. Like if I had to choose two top artists.
All excellent choices.
Mhm.
Do you have any upcoming works or anything you'd like to write in the future?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a fun fantasy adventure kind of story, like more in epic scope, more in the vein of like a Shadow and Bone or like like a big series right now, which is really fun because like I did my sci-fi dystopia, I did contemporary, I did like a retelling, and now I'm doing more of like a fun, big scope fantasy adventure. And then maybe after that, I'll do something, quieter. I've so many ideas. I'm not someone who likes to do the same thing over and over again. I like to change things up. So sorry to people who like want sequels and want like continuations of things. I mean, that's also a possibility for all of my stories. But right now, I'm having fun with this fun, epic fantasy adventure.
I can't wait to read it. Where can we find your books?
Yes, you can find my books on axio.com and also my publisher's websites. So my sci-fi, I have three different publishers. My sci-fi is with Lee and Low Books, and then XOXO is with Harper Collins, and then The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea is with Macmillan. So if you go to the website, all of those publishers and search for my book, they'll tell you all the different places you can purchase the book, and it should be sold in all retailers.
Thank you for that. And where can we find you?
Yes, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Axio.
Thank you so much, Axie. I'm so excited for everyone to experience this book. And if you enjoyed what you saw here, you can find us with more conversations with authors. I'm Gemma for the Kpop-TV Entertainment Network, and I'll see you next time.